Hey guys, today's big idea is interrupt the conversation. Interrupt the conversation. The idea is this: all of us have in our heads, these thoughts that are going through them, and not all they're not always good, and they're not always right, and sometimes even if they are right, they're kind of just destructive. Let me give you an example of that. Man, I always every time I try to start exercising and being healthy, I fail. That might be true, it might be right, but it's not overly helpful. Reflecting on your past failures is not going to help you to not fail in the future, and that's one of the problems that a lot of churches aren't really getting. People come and they try and like beat them over the head rather than show them that there's hope, that there's grace found in Jesus, that just because they can't possibly be good enough doesn't mean that somehow there's kind of this idea in a lot of churches that you can be good enough to earn your right to be a member or some nonsense like that, and it's just completely missing out. And the thing is, we do the exact same thing. See, we like to pass judgment. Oh, those churches are just judgy, but then we do the exact same things to ourselves or to those around us. There's this constant conversation going inside of our head. So the big idea today is interrupt that conversation. Like for instance, if you're biking and you're going up a steep hill, sometimes a lot of the things what you're thinking is, oh, okay, I've gone far enough. Okay, I'm gonna go home now. Okay, this is this is just too hard. I can't do this. That conversation that we allow to just play over and over in our heads. And let me just say real quick, not all churches are judgy. Not all churches and Christians are like that. I've been in churches that have been like that, and I also have been in churches that haven't been like that. So I'm not trying to say that anything about against church or whatever. So the conversation that's taking place in your head, it will ruin anything you do if you let it. Anything you do, from cooking and cleaning, to exercise, to facing anxiety and depression, to all these different things. And especially in we're kind of living in a very fear-based culture right now, and it makes it very much so more difficult to start facing fears. There's kind of this expectation that you don't have to try it anymore. You don't have. It's okay to just exist. That you know kind of like your fears are they have a basis. You don't have to work at not being afraid. You can hey, don't go out and exercise because you might get sick. And it's like we're kind of allowing room for our anxiety and our depression and stuff to just thrive. Oh, you're feeling that? Here, just take a pill for it. And so we're not really fixing the problem. We're not really addressing the problem. We're just kind of allowing it to be a normal part of our life. You see this a lot with, for instance, depression. I don't feel like getting up, so I won't. I don't feel like stopping and doing this, so I won't. I don't have a problem. It's like, well, lying to yourself about it isn't going to make it any better. When you have that conversation in your head, it will ruin anything if you let it. You really have to interrupt it. Let's say, for instance, you're afraid to sleep. Change what you're thinking about and saying on what you're saying in your head. Answer the lies and don't just accept them. Oh, why am I so scared? Okay, there's nothing to be scared about. What if I don't wake up? Well, if I'm going to die, being awake or being asleep isn't going to fix anything about that. What if something happens while I'm asleep? It hasn't happened any other times, or maybe it has happened, and that's part of the reason why you're scared. In which case, you could obviously try to get help about that. Because you really do have to work through these things. What's worse than having a destructive thought in your head is when that destructive voice in your head has a basis, when it has a cause, a previous cause that's causing it to be to continue. That's when it's even worse because you have an excuse for it. I tried to do this one time, and this bad thing happened, so I just don't ever want to try that again. It gets to be where not only do you have that destructive voice in your head, but you have proof for the destructive voice, and that makes it really worse. So instead of just allowing your brain to go through these different worst case scenarios, start addressing them. Okay, yeah, it did happen. But even if it happens again, I didn't die before. I'll make it through. That's one thing I had to start doing when I was facing my anxiety is, what if I start having, what if I go there and I have a panic attack? What am I going to do? What if I do have a panic attack? If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. With fear of sleep. Okay, so I can't think of anything that I typically think when I'm going through that. But I'll go to some other examples that I can think of. I'll never be able to do this. This is something that I'll never be able to do. You did it before, you can do it again. Sometimes, like for instance with anxiety, I'll never be able to go to that city. Well, you did it before, you can do it again. Obviously, if you haven't been there before, then you're going to have a different conversation. I'm gonna die. This is gonna, especially with anxiety. You haven't so far, right? And who can control the minutes of their life, anyways? I mean, if you die, like an aneurysm, for instance, unexpected. There's nothing you can do, and it happens. I mean, what are you gonna do? Sit around worrying all day about whether you're gonna have one or not? If you're that concerned about it, stop thinking about it, and I mean, that'll do it. That'll do more because it'll not have you so petrified. Oh, I'm gonna fail. I just know it. Well, if it happens, it happens. Worrying about it won't help it to not happen. Your reasoning and your voice, those will be unique. Mine is unique. The things that I just said, those are things that are unique to me. You're gonna have to figure out your own reasoning, your own voice, your own way to combat that inner argument. You're gonna have to find your own answers and those kinds of things. But you will never find your voice, your response to those inner lies that you hear, if you don't keep fighting. Endure the battle. Stick it out. Don't just throw in the towel. Be in it to win it. And if something upsets your plans, just keep going. You can't just give up with depression, give up with anxiety, because it's just not going to fix anything. The only way forward is by sticking it out. It will seem sometimes like the destructive voice that you're hearing inside your head is your own, but you have to be aware that it's more of maybe your anxiety talking, or your depression talking, or your addiction talking. It's not really something healthy, and sometimes it'll be your voice. You know what I mean? Like your thoughts, and that's because you've trained yourself to think bad thoughts. So retrain yourself to have different thoughts. Now, obviously, I'm not trying to say, that you don't need God or any of that kind of stuff. I'm not trying to say that at all. But a lot of the things that we deal with are learned behaviors, and if it's learned, it can be unlearned. So if you have anxiety, you're going to have a voice that kind of intrudes on your thoughts and tells you things that you didn't used to think. Like, oh, this is, I'm going to die, I'm going to have a heart attack. Where'd those thoughts come from? See what I mean? And then you're going to have some voices that is kind of like outside influence, whether you believe in demons or whether you believe in just people saying mean things to you or whatever. I'm not even trying to argue theology here. I'm just saying, whatever source that voice comes from, start learning to interrupt the conversations that's taking place in your head. Learn to interrupt it. Because if you're dealing with things like anxiety and depression, you will have thoughts that are just not true. Like, let's say, for instance, you have depression, and you're going to have these thoughts that come in and say, nobody likes me, I'm worthless. Well, that's not really true. It's just something that's going through your head, and you have to learn how to address that voice and kind of just stop it. So the verse of the day, this is kind of a little bit different. I don't really want to say a verse. What I want to say is find verses that address your specific problem. The Bible talks about a lot of different things, and no matter what you're going through, there's going to be parts of the Bible that's going to relate and speak to you more so than other parts. And so it really it's something that you have to discover on your own by reading the Bible, by exploring, by seeking out to God for yourself. And so there's really just kind of something where you have to find verses that address your specific problem. Two that I'm going to mention for me, Deuteronomy 31 verse 8, it says, "It is the Lord who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed. So that, to me, that really gives me a lot of encouragement. Hey, God, I'm not doing this thing alone. God's with me, and that's something good, because I am going to be afraid. I am going to be dismayed. I'm going to be distraught sometimes. But I can steady myself in God and know that even when my physical body is failing me, even when my fear is overtaking me, I still know that from my innermost person I can still trust in God. And to me, that gives me a lot of hope, that even when my flesh, when my body is failing me in a fight against anxiety, that God is still there with me. And it's not the end of the world, even if it is the end of my physical life. Philippians 4:8 says this, which is the second verse I wanted to read. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. And just the idea of kind of controlling that thought. So what do we do with this? Let's talk about some action steps here. First off, be on your guard. Be on your guard, because thoughts are going to just drop in, especially if you haven't trained yourself to kind of work through these thoughts. If you just kind of let your thoughts run wild, if you think things and just kind of don't really address them. Yeah, okay, I'm a failure. Nobody likes me. So you have to kind of be on your guard, because that voice is just going to be something that interrupts your conversation, and something that needs to be addressed. Like, oh man, I've just messed up too many times. Here's the thing. God can forgive you for anything. So maybe you are a mess up. Maybe you've never done right. All right, whatever. But here's the thing. When you trust in Jesus, He forgives you. His righteousness is what covers you, not your own righteousness. You don't have to be good enough. Oh, I'm a pretty good person. How do you know? What are you basing that off of? Yourself? You're comparing yourself to yourself? When it's not about me earning forgiveness. It's about the fact that I can't undo what I've done. But check it out. Jesus will forgive me when I trust Him. He died for me. And then to prove Himself, He raised Himself from the dead. That's something that gives absolute certainty of something. And even if the things that I'm saying about myself were true about me before, or what other people are saying about me before were true, when you trust in Jesus, although there may be physical consequences for your actions, as far as you're compared with God, that's not who you are anymore. You're a different person. And that's something that you have to hold on to past that voice. You're nothing but a failure. You're nothing but a druggie. You'll never amount to anything. That's who I was, but that's not who I am. And just being able to address that and saying, no, that's not where I am anymore. So be on your guard. When you start hearing things in your head that are not true, challenge them. Oh, what if I fail? Well, what if you don't? If we're talking about what ifs, who says you have to fail because you have failed in the past? Something is not true just because it feels true, or just because it seems true, but if it actually is true. And this is where kind of you have to. Sometimes there's going to be things that enter your head and they sound true, but you just have to kind of like stop and say that's not really true. And there's sometimes that something pops in your head and so you have to kind of address it with faith. For instance, those things were true, and I have messed up, but I trust that God is faithful past my faithlessness, and I trust that He can forgive me, and that He will as I'm trusting in Him. So there's that. Start thinking about good things rather than just letting bad things go through your head all the time. And then kind of connected with this is this last kind of thought: control your thoughts. These are just a bunch of different little things you can do to kind of take action, to move forward. Think about what you're thinking about. Control what you're thinking about. Stop thinking about bad stuff all the time. Be on your guard for when that voice comes up. Challenge the thoughts in your head, and then believe things that are true, not things that you feel. Big difference there. So I hope that this was helpful for you. I really do. Remember the big idea: interrupt the conversation in your head. And so from the view of a Christian, there's interrupting the conversation with who I was versus who now Jesus says that I am. And from the view of someone who's not a believer, then interrupt the conversation like when you have those destructive ideas that come by through depression and anxiety. Oh, nobody loves me. How do you know? Did you ask everybody? Maybe you've just not established friendships. Why don't you go make some friends and then see if people love you? See what I mean? It's if you're keeping yourself away from forming friendships, you can't say nobody loves you because you're not giving them a chance. But when you have these kinds of destructive thoughts, just like when you're exercising, you have to break through those destructive thoughts. It's the same thing now. Interrupt that conversation, whether you're done with exercise, spiritual growth and development, anxiety, depression, addiction, whatever it is. There's you have to train yourself and you have to control your thoughts. So I hope that this was helpful. You have a great day. Bye.